when we started a pre-K program in our school, which was only 3 years ago, one of the criteria I had as superintendent was, I didn't want it to become a mini kindergarten where the kids were doing the same thing and expectations were academic and kids had any access to technology. And my condition within our district for the people who are developing is that it had to be an outdoor-based program where kids could go outside, reconnect with some gross motor skills, nature, breathe, and not get drawn into this sort of academic rote learning that maybe had some technology pieces to it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brighter Together podcast. My guests today are Maria Libby. She is the superintendent for 2 different districts, MSAD number 28 and 5-Town Community School District. Both of those offices are located in Camden, Maine. Also with us today is Michael Felton, goes by Mike. He is the superintendent at St. George Municipal School Unit, and that one is located in Tenants Harbor, Maine. Maria and Mike, welcome to the podcast. We're so glad that you chose to join us today.
Good to be
Happy
here.
to be here. Yep.
We're going to start with Maria. We're going to do ladies first. Maria, give us a little bit of information about your schools and what's happening there.
Well, there's a lot happening in any school district, so I'll try to keep it brief, but we're located in Midcoast, Maine. And between my 2 districts, we have a single elementary school, a single middle school, and a single high school with about 1,400 students. And we my 2 districts work very closely together. We're located in the same geographic region. And since I'm the superintendent of both, we try to align ourselves. And we have a lot of different things happening in our school district. We're in an interesting community. It's a fairly wealthy area. Midcoast, Maine is an expensive place to live in general, although we do have about 20% free and reduced lunch in our district. And we have a lot of unique things happening. We have a nature-based pre-K program at our elementary school. We do a lot of outdoor learning in our elementary school in particular, but we tried to get students outside in all of our schools. We use project-based learning as kind of a modality for a lot of our middle school students. We actually have a middle school where most students graduate saying that they loved middle school, which is a highly unusual thing for middle school students to say.
Fantastic.
And our high school, our students do pretty well. We have a lot of interesting things happening there. We have really robust arts, music, athletic programs. We also have an innovation center where students are doing a wide variety of very interesting things. We've got an internship program. So trying to focus on multiple pathways for students to figure out what their passions are. So nice. we have a lot going on, but try to stay focused on student-centered instruction and what's best for students.
Absolutely. That sounds like a place I'd want to go to high school, honestly. That was a few years ago for me. I think I'm 40 years out now. Anyway, Mike, tell us about what's happening at St. George Municipal.
Sure. So St. George is a small rural fishing community on a peninsula in Midcoast, Maine. We've got about 2,700 year-round residents, and we have in our pre-K to 12 district, we've got about 300 students. So we have 200 students that attend our pre-K through 8 school, St. George School, located right in Tenants Harbor, which is one of the villages in St. George. And then we have about 100 students that have high school choice because our district is so small, we don't have a high school. And actually, most of our students go to Maria's high school, including my daughter, who has had an amazing experience there. So I can vouch for that school. But our kids are really fortunate to have a community-based school, and then they get this amazing choice for high school. And there's 4 high schools they go to, and we provide transportation to all of those high schools to make that high school choice real. I think an important part of our story is in 2015, our town broke away from a larger regional district because the families in the town wanted more control over the education of their students.
I was going to ask you about that because I knew that there were units. So I'm like, So I'm glad you answered me before I even got there.
There you go, jumping the gun a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
But so I was hired as the first superintendent in 2015. They told me in no uncertain terms to do whatever it takes for students and to think outside the box. And so that's how we've really approached it. The heart of who we are as a community school district, that's sort of what that's why we can do what we can do for our kids is We've got investment in the school from the families, the community members, the businesses, the civic organizations, the town itself. And it's really turned the peninsula into the students' campus. So we have the building, but the peninsula, they learn all over the peninsula. I think some of the more innovative things we have going on right now is we're partnering with our regional technical high school to create the nation's first pre-K through 12 career and technical education program. So, and we define career technical education, CTE, as hands-on, minds-on learning, technical learning connected to career and community. So we do that from pre-K when they enter school. We want that all the way through for our seniors. So we've got kindergarten and first graders that are working with a contractor. They measure 2x4s and they cut them to length with saws. We've got fifth graders who are 3D printing. We've got middle school students that are programming robotics, and everything in between. And we try to really have a deep connection between their learning, future careers in this region, and their community. And I think the other piece is we have an excellent special education director, Dr. Jessica Berry, and her team and the district as a whole is focused a lot on birth through pre-K, birth through school, and connecting with families. You know, the second a baby is born in St. George, trying to connect with the
Early
families.
identification, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, demographics wise, over half of our students qualify for free and reduced meals, or is economically disadvantaged, I should say. And about 24% of our students have an IEP. Just an interesting piece on that is our incoming classes for pre-K, generally about half of them come in with an IEP already now. But we've had some great early intervention programs, a great staff, and we're seeing actually a drop in the overall numbers, especially with kids who come in with really high needs, seeing them be able to sort of drop down to lower services because they're functioning at higher levels.
Right,
Those are some
get
of the
them
things
early.
we've got going on.
Get them early while when they're still developing, and support those developments. It's so key. It is so key. I'm a speech pathologist, as you guys know, and I'm like right there with you going, that is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So kudos to you and your team for doing that. So, so Maria, I have an odd question. Why do they keep two separate districts if you guys are kind of combined? I'm curious about that.
That's a really good question, and there's a little bit of history there.
I'm sure, yeah.
Back in the day, it was a single K-12 district that represented just the towns of Camden and Rockport, and it was known as MSAD 28. And at the high school level, 3 neighboring towns, small towns, Hope, Appleton, and Lincolnville, tuitioned their students to our high school. And then about 25 years ago, we built a new high school. And when we built the new high school, those 3 towns decided they didn't want to tuition anymore. Rather, they'd like to become part of that district. Mm-hmm. So a new district was formed for just the high school called the 5-town CSD to give all the towns representation. But so MSAD shrunk to just K-8 at Camden and Rockport. A new district was formed at the high school. And then in our little corner of the woods here, we have those 5 towns, but the towns of Hope, Appleton, and Lincolnville have a different school district for their K-8 students called Union 69 that has a different superintendent.
Why? Okay.
So it is a little bit crazy that in our 5 towns, we have 3 separate school districts. I mean, I represent 1,400 of those students, and the Union 69, the other superintendent in the 3rd district, has maybe 400 students. And we've often had conversations that really it should be one school district. I mean, I do operate as though the 5-town CSD and MSAD 28 are like one school district, even though I have 2 school board meetings, 2 budgets, 2 state reports for everything. But it really would make sense. And the reason why it's not, Maine went through a consolidation effort years ago, and we talked about consolidating all these districts into a single district, which would make a lot of sense. But those towns of Hope, Appleton, Lincolnville didn't want to give up their local control, much like Mike's district.
Yeah,
St. George
exactly.
withdrew because a small town, they want control of their K-8 school, and they don't want to lose their schoolhouse. So they really weren't interested that much in consolidating. And then the districts in Camden and Rockport, who have are wealthier in terms of their property taxes and whose teachers get paid more felt like if we consolidated, it would raise the teacher pay for Hope Appleton, Lincolnville, and Camden Rockport would pay for it because Camden Rockport didn't get any subsidy. And Camden Rockport said, why would we increase our taxes to our residents to pay for raising the salaries in neighboring towns? So those discussions went nowhere. And for years, our districts paid massive penalties because we didn't consolidate. And then eventually the penalties went away. And here we are left with 3 school districts in these 5 towns. And there's no question that it would make sense for it to be a single district. And it easily could be. But there are political and local pressures that just prevent that from happening.
Well, and these are people's children. This is their future, and I get it. I understand, that, and that's the thing. And part of the reason why we do this podcast is because political has, it's always been there, but it just feels like it's right in our face. Education is such a hotbed topic. And we really want at Brighter Together to talk about what's the good things that are happening. And you guys have some amazing things going on in your school districts. And, let's take the politics out of it and love on our kids, right? To keep our students.
And part of it isn't, we say politics, and when I'm thinking about politics, I'm thinking about just local politics and sort of that maneuvering, not thinking about the larger political picture. But people feel incredibly passionate about education because it is about their kids.
Yes.
And it's so personal for so many people. And the business itself is so heavily relies on relationship building, and it's about people's children. So it's a very personal endeavor at every level. So, there tend to be strong opinions about it.
Of course, yeah.
Sorry.
Go right ahead, Mike.
I also think that there's huge importance in having students feel like they're part of a community and having families feel like they're invested in part of that community. And you can do that in all different levels. You can do it in big districts, you can do it in small districts, and each has their own advantage, and every town and group of towns has got to figure out what's best for them. But I think our students are certainly hungry for it, and I really think our society and world are hungry for this sense of belonging and community. Yeah. And, we need to structure our schools and our governance structures for our schools and the cultures in our schools to provide that community, because I think that is foundational for students' well-being and learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And how much, so I'm going to ask a question, it's kind of a hotbed question a little bit. How much is the technology and AI and all of that affecting what you guys are doing? Because it's having, and I don't think always a good impact. There are good things, but on what you guys are doing, I know you guys have it. From what it sounds like, it's really like about the child and learning what the child is interested in and such. But how are you guys navigating that whole minefield?
Yeah, I know Maria's been, working at this, and we're with her district, and we've been focused a lot on this through our wellness committee. And a big, obviously for everybody, is how are cell phones and social media affecting our students. And we just did a book study on the anxious generation and had a lot of good discussions with staff. And I know Maria did a similar thing at her district. Part of why we are moving towards the CTE, hands-on, minds-on learning is, in some ways, kids' brains have been rewired through social media, through constant stimulation and instant gratification. So it's really hard to engage in the traditional manner, I guess. But what we've found is when kids can build and create and use their hands and their mind, it's like another part of their brain lights up. That's what one of our teachers describes it, like they light up again. And I think it's because they're starving for it. They are constantly consuming digital media, like flat 2D visual stimulation. Like we want our kids to move from being consumers to producers. And when they are able to do that, you do see them like completely re-engage in their learning. So part of why we're doing this is we feel like this can be a model for other districts, certainly rural districts, but also suburban and urban districts, on how to re-engage kids in learning. And we think it's really important to do that at the pre-K to 5 level as well, because we start losing kids in like 3rd grade.
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead, Maria.
I would just echo a lot of what Mike said. And, it's a lot of the outdoor education emphasis in our school district is an antidote to the technology piece. And when we started a pre-K program in our school, which was only 3 years ago, one of the criteria I had as superintendent was, I didn't want it to become a mini kindergarten where the kids were doing the same thing and expectations were academic and kids had any access to technology. And my condition within our district for the people who are developing is that it had to be an outdoor-based program where kids could go outside, reconnect with some gross motor skills, nature, breathe, and not get drawn into this sort of academic rote learning that maybe had some technology pieces to it. And it's been highly successful in our district. And students go out every single day of the year, and it's mostly outdoors. And, in our high school, we're in the midst of an effort that Mike was alluding to go phone free next year for the school day. We are already phone free at the K-8 level, and we're working on an effort, which I think is actually going to the board in a couple of weeks, for the board to vote on whether or not we're going to go phone free at our high school, which I think will happen. So we are trying to balance that. Like, I never worry that students are going to have the technology skills they need to survive in the workplace. They have plenty of time on technology,
Yep.
and they're figuring it out. By age 8, they know more than all the adults in the world.
All of
So,
us, right? Everybody in the
I'm-
room. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, I'm not worried about that, and I do think that there's a place for safety, digital literacy and those things, and we are keeping those things in place. And we have one-to-one devices in the state of Maine. We have for a long time, and we're going to try to take a look. I'm trying to ask a really hard question actually at our upcoming board retreat this summer, and my question is going to be that we examine next year: what evidence do we have that technology has helped improve learning in our school district? Like, is there any evidence that technology at all has helped us? And I've been a holdout at our K2 level in not allowing us to do one-to-one devices at the K2 level, because if I had my preference, there would be no technology, probably at our K4 school, at our elementary school at all. But, the reality is that some of the state testing that we're required to do requires technology to do it.
Yes, yeah.
So, on some level, it's hard to do an outright ban, and there are things for students to learn. But I am with Mike that I think people are starving for human connection, real world experiences, and creating and building and having tangible things. I think it makes a difference in learning. As a society, I don't think we're headed in the right direction with the emphasis on technology, particularly social media. I think there's a lot of harm happening to students.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd add is, Matt, I think everything Maria said is right on. And what I would add is I'm really curious about the potential of AI to personalize and provide personalized individual tutoring for students to speed up skills acquisition, so you can free up more time for nature-based, play-based, project-based, hands-on, minds-on learning. And I know there are some schools in the country that are really innovating in that space. And I'm really interested in for us to start experimenting with that in some way. If we could find a way to provide students with that individualized, personalized, adaptive learning, and still provide them that hands-on piece, I'm really curious about it. Because I also, if that does give kids a big advantage, I don't want our kids to miss out on that and fall behind students in other places.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah,
It is.
you got to be really smart. Technology isn't all good and it isn't all bad.
Correct.
So you've got to be really strategic. But Maria's right. You got to ask hard questions like, is this benefiting our kids?
And part of it is, if you just take computers, and we looked at what is happening in most schools in this country, I don't know the answer, but is 75% of computer use simply a replacement for something that existed? And if it is, that's not capitalizing on the advantage of what technology could bring. And so, I am with Mike. If AI can help kids learn better and free up time for other things, then it's great. But if AI is used in a way that it ends up kids are using AI to write instead of writing on their own, and that's the outcome of AI, that's not beneficial. So I think schools have to be really careful about what they're doing, and it can be hard to implement it in a way that actually takes advantage of what the technology can truly lend to improve learning. That's where it gets really difficult, because you're dealing again with hundreds of teachers in classrooms who are the ones at the ground level implementing whatever we're talking about, and to make sure that everything is aligned to take the best advantage you can without going into places that aren't necessarily advantageous and could be, harmful, I think is a really hard task.
And it's happening so quickly. I mean, I'm 57 years old. I mean, we didn't have any of this stuff at all. I mean, when I graduated with my master's degree, which was in 94, the internet was just barely getting started in 1994. And here we are, 2025, and it's a whole different world. What's it going to be like in 5 or 10 years, or when the next generation comes along? It's mind-boggling, really, how quickly things have
thought
changed.
I have on that is, so part of our project, our CTE Makerspace project, is we're building a CTE Makerspace building that's going to have shop space for boat building, woodworking, metalwork, as well as a makerspace for like 3D printers, laser cutters, CNC routers, robotics, and sewing machines. And it's really about bringing the newer technologies and traditional trades together. And we think that synthesis is really where some of the magic can happen, from 3D printing the hulls of boats to cabinet makers that use CNC routers to do designs. But I think it's really important to see the technology as tools and the importance of the person as the builder creator. And to honor and recognize the history, I mean, especially in working class communities, that for generations we've had fishermen, farmers, boat builders, mechanics, carpenters, cooks, artisans, and engineers who've been using their hands and minds, not just to make a living, but to build a good life. And that's the ethos, the ethic we really want to install in our kids. And technology can be a part of that, but I think it's got to be grounded in place and in people and in your community.
Yeah, I think you guys as communities are lucky to have you guys at the helm, because it sounds like you have such a grounding in where it needs to go, and that's incredible. Okay, I'm going to shift us just a tiny bit. So with your districts being smaller, how have you found that keeping and recruiting top talent is for you guys? I know it's got to be a challenge, and I'm just curious about how you're managing those challenges.
You start, Maria.
I'm happy to jump in. It's harder than it used to be.
Yeah.
If we had a grade 3 opening, we used to get 40 applications for a position, and now we might get 8. And of those 8, maybe 3 have their certifications and have any experience. So the pool of candidates has significantly changed in the past 20 years in particular. We've tried to expand how we're recruiting and cast a wider net of where we try to advertise for jobs. I have some interviews tomorrow, and one of my candidates is from California. So we are reaching other places.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Good.
One of the hardest challenges that we currently face is the ability of anybody to move into our community.
Yeah.
Because housing is so limited and it's incredibly expensive. Since the pandemic, our housing prices have skyrocketed, as they did many places in the country. But since we are coastal communities, the real estate is extremely expensive. I think the average home price in Camden right now is like $637,000. So and the housing stock is limited. So even if you could afford to move here, there isn't much available to move to. So it's a challenge, because we have some people who recognize that and don't even apply anymore because they recognize they won't be able to move here. And people who do think that they can move here often struggle mightily to find a place to live, even after they've taken a job. So that has had a huge impact on our ability to attract candidates. I feel fortunate because we are a district that is a little bit wealthier. Our community has supported education. Our teachers are like in the 95th percentile statewide in terms of their pay.
Okay.
So we naturally attract people because of the reputation of our school district and the salaries that we offer. So I think that gives us an advantage that some districts don't have, and I recognize that and feel fortunate for that. Even with those advantages, I recognize it is very hard to recruit these days because of the realities of the real estate market.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say we've been really fortunate in being able to generally fill all our positions. I know a lot of districts struggle with that. Part of the reason I think is our district is known as being a pretty innovative district where teachers have a fair amount of ability to design programs. We find resources for big ideas, and I think that attracts people to our district. So that has helped. I'd echo what Maria says that the housing is an enormous challenge. We hired a great principal last summer, and our biggest concern after we hired her was would she and her family be able to find a house in St. George? And thankfully she was. But I think right now the cheapest house in our town for sale is over $400,000. So if you're like a young teacher right out of college, and there's not like there are many to almost any rentals. So we've lost candidates because of that. And that is one of our biggest challenges.
Do some of them rent outside of the district and commute? Does that happen? Yeah.
Yeah, but I would say rentals everywhere are limited. And I mean, I look at some of the small rentals and their annual, like their monthly rent is more than my mortgage. So it still makes it very difficult. I mean, we hired a great music band teacher, and she rented a room from one of our ed techs for a year so she could like live in St. George and actually do the job. And she later found a house to rent, but that's like how tight it's become.
And it seems like you guys insurmountable, and yet you're doing it. So kudos to you both and to your districts and what you're doing. It's impressive. Okay, one last question, and I ask this at the end of every podcast to all of I missed one. I think Andrew got away without answering this question. Andrew Dolph is another superintendent in Maine that I interviewed. So if you want to see that interview, you can look on our list. But if you could miraculously, and I say miraculously, solve one challenge in your schools, what would you want to solve? Maria, I'll let you go first.
Gosh, I wasn't prepared for the answer to that question.
I spring it on people. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there are so many challenges. I mean, if I had to solve one challenge, I might choose the challenge of homelessness right now because the homeless rate has increased significantly in our area. We have a lot of homeless students, transient families, and I think that their lives are particularly difficult, sleeping on couches, having a hard time having access just to a safe place to be at night. That's probably the problem that I would solve, to give everybody a stable home, so that they could have that really basic need met. I do think that there are a lot of challenges that we face out there in society. But since I haven't had a whole lot of time to think about it, that might be the one I choose first.
Yeah. Okay, Mike, you got a little bit of time to think about it.
I did. I'm glad you chose Maria first. I mean, I would say I would look at the issue of time, because our most limited resource, honestly, is time. We don't have enough time with the kids for everything that we want and need to do. So we've had lots of discussions about how do we turn after school time, weekends, summer, into essentially year-round, round-the-clock education, and they don't know it. We've talked about ideas of like, could we get one of these personalized AI tutor programs and have kids come after school for 30 minutes an hour, and then they spend an hour in our new building building something. So they're getting both pieces, the intensive academic skills along with the ability to build, create, and learn technical skills. In the new building, we want to offer those after school weekend summer programs to, students and adults. So, I think during the pandemic, our students fell behind, and we were fortunate. Like a lot of our districts in Maine, we stayed open, even if it was a modified schedule. But our students were still impacted, and we're seeing, especially in our younger students, the cost of that. So they need more like education and skill building. And I don't know that we can do that within the school day and get them where they need to be. So I want to figure out how do we do that outside the school day in a sustainable way for our teachers and for our students and families to get our kids not just where they could be, but where they need to be to thrive and excel and be their best selves. And to me, that's a really big nut to crack in education. And if we can do that and they're learning all the time, I think our students and hopefully students, across the country will, sort of lead us into the world we need to get to.
They're certainly doing a lot of studies on it right now. I know I've been following a little bit of it, and it's interesting to see. Even as a speech therapist, they're looking for ways for AI to support that, because there's never been enough of us, as you know. So,
Right.
So it's interesting to see where that will go. I don't think computers and AI will ever replace a person, as you guys know. It's technology. It cannot replace people. But anyway, well. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Mike, so much for your time. This has been an incredible conversation. Maria, where should people go if they want to learn a little bit more about you or your schools?
Probably the website to our, webpage, and it's at fivetowns.net, all spelled out, FIVETOWNS.net. And, there's a site for each district, and one starts with sad.fivetowns.net, and the other one is CSD, fivetowns.net. So that's probably the best place to learn about that, is on the internet.
Perfect. Okay. And Mike, where do we learn more about you and your schools?
Yeah, sort of the same. Our website is stgeorgemsu.org. And I would also say, if, we do a lot of tours of our new building. I meet with a lot of people who are interested in learning more about their schools. So if people are in the area, I would encourage them to reach out. We really appreciate sharing our story, and we value learning from others.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
I do the same.
Yeah. Thank you again so much. This has been an incredible conversation. I am looking forward to someday meeting you both in person, hoping to get up to Bar Harbor in June. We'll see. Just incredible what you guys are doing. And I'm proud to say that we could highlight what you're doing. So thank you for your time again.
Thank you.
Very much.
Pleasure to be here.